Today's episode of Vice Versa, we're talking about the Ford F-150 Lightning EV, Virgin Galactic's plans for space tourism, Audi's plans for vehicle to everything, and much more. And as usual, I'm joined by the guy who actually got to experience the Ford F-150, Ricky Roy. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing good, Matt. How you doing today? It's been a couple of days now. I haven't been able to tell anybody about it because I was under like a full embargo. But yes, I was in Michigan last week to see the F-150, and it was a super honor. I'm not really sure why I was picked, but it was fascinating, and it was super awesome with the engineering team, so we'll talk about it here in a second. But it's been a good week. Our video this week was on that, and it'll be a link in the description. And you've had a pretty good week, I think we can say as well. Your video is blowing up. I wasn't sure if you'd show up today. I thought you might have retired and you might have been out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what was your video this week?
My video was about solid state wind energy and wind energy that doesn't use blades. And it's kind of struck a chord with everybody. It's getting lots of views right now. Kind of caught me off guard, but it was a very fun, interesting topic. So I guess I shouldn't have been too surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, the YouTube gods shine upon us, and you just got to take it and run with it.
Exactly.
I'm hoping that happens for us soon here as well. All right. So as we talked about, our very first story today is it's official. Ford has unveiled their F-150 Lightning pickup truck. It'll start under $40,000 for the base model with the standard range, and it'll come up to a extended range 300-mile variant. And it can power your house, so it has V2G or V2H, vehicle to home, I guess you can call it. What's cool is Matt mentioned Joe Biden had a chance to go check it out, and he was doing hot laps in it and really having some fun, which is really cool to see him having fun like a little kid again. But this thing is pretty remarkable, I actually think. I think this is going to be a hit car. And the reason I say that is because I kind of had a realization when I flew out there. I live in California, Matt lives in Massachusetts. We kind of live in our own little bubbles where we think everything is the way we see it. Like, for example, here in California, everybody, there's a picture of me with the car. I'll just let this video run maybe as I talk, maybe if that'll cooperate. But here in California, when we drive around, all you see is Hondas, Toyotas, there's tons of Teslas, right? I get to Detroit and it is American cars. I think I saw 5 Hondas and Toyotas and 1 Tesla in 3 days. It is markedly different than what we have here. So the first thing I think we should realize is this is the best-selling car. I mentioned in my video, the year is 1981. Robert De Niro wins an Oscar for Raging Bull. That was the last year that Ford wouldn't have the best-selling car in America. Not just pickup, but car. So wildly dominant, and now it's electric. So first and foremost, we should kind of takes us a moment to say, oh my gosh, electric vehicles aren't some small little niche anymore. The best-selling car in America is electric. And what's crazy is Ford knows this is the best F-150 they've ever made. And Matt, I'll have you jump in and give your thoughts, and then I'll switch over to driving impressions, I think. Okay. But this is the best F-150 ever, and it's electric. So now Ford has the unenviable position where they're still having to sell gas cars and telling them about all the great stuff about the electric version and dealing with that dichotomy. It's kind of a bizarre thing. And before I go on about it, Matt, what stood out to you, or what are you thinking about with this?
Well, the first thing was it just knocked my socks off. It's like I was expecting something a little lackluster, and they didn't. It was like, what is it? It's like 11 outlets around the truck. And when I saw the front of the truck, I was like, oh, they're doing that faux, like grill area in the front. And then they got to the part of the video where it showed the trunk. And my mind was blown. I was like, okay, I get why they're doing that front the way they are, because that trunk is amazing. And the fact that they've got that cut down makes it reachable, that you can actually get into it. It's astonishing how much storage space that truck is going to have. There were other things that jumped out to me, which were like the vehicle to home charging, which was the first thing that was just like, wow, that's awesome. It's that 9.2, I think it is, kilowatts. 9.6 that it can do, which is enough to supply energy to pretty much every home. It's very few homes that would probably need more than that. That's insane. That's 2 power walls. It's like sitting in your driveway, and if you're out of power, plug in and you get some power. The trailer hitch assist mode, I had to kind of dive into that a little bit more because I was curious about what that actually was. And for somebody like me who's not used to driving with a trailer behind me, or hooking it up. It's like it's a system that basically makes that brain dead easy to do. Like it makes it feel like you're not driving with a trailer behind you. It takes care of everything for you. The little nuances of how it throws the weight off and how you have to drive a little different. It sounds so cool. And then the other thing that jumped at me was their self-driving. It's like I think this is the first time they've really talked about it, which is I'm blanking on the name of it. It was the
Blue Cruise.
Blue Cruise. And I
Which
was
is
just like,
funny because even in the event, some of the engineers called it Super Cruise.
oh, they did? Yeah. But I love that they've got the Blue Cruise for Ford, and it's very similar to full self-driving where it's not using LiDAR, it's using computer vision. And so it's like, wow, Ford. It's like they just kind of, I've been harping on a lot of these companies for not talking about what they're doing, what their big plans are for the future. And this for me was like Ford coming out and kind of dropping the gauntlet and saying, no, we're here. We're serious about this. And this is just the beginning of what we're talking about. So it did not feel like it was a compliance truck. It feels like they're taking this seriously and they're trying to build the best truck they've ever made. And it's massive. It's absolutely massive. So just completely blown away.
My first takeaway, if you go back to my screen, just to remind everybody what the Cybertruck looks like.
Yes.
I have a reservation for a Cybertruck.
Me too.
And you do too. You'll need one for your lair, which somebody already mentioned. But when I saw the F-150, my first thought is, it looks like I flew out here. It looks like a F-150 that we have all seen before. But then it hit me. Imagine driving to get like a gallon of milk in this thing.
I know.
In the Cybertruck. You're going to get constant attention everywhere you go, right? And there are people in the world who love attention, right? The people, that's not me. I got a white Tesla because I don't want attention. My favorite color for the Model 3 is red, but I didn't get that color for this reason.
Yeah.
So it hit me like, oh crap, I'm going to have to go to like the grocery store in this thing. And everywhere I go, have people turning around and looking at me. And the F-150 is the opposite. It's just a truck. Take what we do, what everyone loves, what we sell 1 million of, and make it electric. And so then it kind of dawned on me, okay, there's probably a huge market of people who aren't looking for like the cutting edge or, the kind of coolness or, the hip stuff with Tesla. They just want a truck that's electric. And you tell them about some of the perks that you mentioned, and you have a hit on your hands. So at the event, I got there. For the first 20 minutes, it wasn't even about the truck, really. It was about the vehicle-to-home option and feature. And they were talking about Texas, what happened there. And, I think what they were doing is they were thinking, look, there are people for whom the truck is kind of like a part of the family. Every 8 years, I get a new one, or every so many years. And it's something that they understand that they're going to have to convince these people to buy the electric version. And what better way than to have things like vehicle to home, where if something bad happens, the power goes out, you have a massive battery in your car running your house. Like you hit it on the head. 2 power walls means you can run air conditioning. You can even deal with a spike of an electric motor, like a big high voltage motor. You can run all your fridges and air conditioning and ovens and everything else. And you mentioned 2 power walls in terms of power output, and 10 power walls in terms of capacity.
Actually, capacity, yes. They said 3 days.
And
3 days of power on just the truck if it's fully charged. That's insane.
It's really cool. And if you have solar, remember it works incongruently with solar. That could be 10 days easily for someone like me. So it reminded me again of my gripe about Tesla. I hate that they don't support vehicle to grid. And the reason is not that I think you do it all the time. I'm not trying to save $1 a day with energy arbitrage. I'm not worried about that. But I want to know, like, if something crazy were to happen, that I could just plug in my car and with the solar and the power wall and everything else and just never have to worry about it. So those are the kind of the highlights that really stuck out to me. The driving of the truck was also really, really cool. Ford dropped off a hybrid gas F-150 for me to drive from the airport to the show.
Nice touch.
And it was a really nice touch, especially because I got to drive the gas version, the electric version, and the gas version home. So the comparisons in my mind were just so fresh. And the gas version is a 10-speed automatic because, again, you have such a sweet little tiny sweet spot for torque for a gas motor that you have to have all these gears. The truck felt like it was constantly shifting gears and turning in the car, there's so much body swaying. Anybody who drives SUVs and pickup trucks, you guys know, the center of gravity is really high. And it in the video, it's probably a little bit mean. I said, it's more akin to steering a boat or like captaining a boat than it is driving a car, which is how I've always felt. It's very tough for me because you feel like you could flip it if you turn it too hard. And then you get in the electric version and the chief engineer is driving around and just like really quickly changing lanes, and it feels like you're just sliding on rails. It is anybody who isn't a fan of electric vehicles, like anybody in the audience who's watching who's a Ford guy or like a pickup truck guy, go drive one and then come back and find this video and leave us a comment. It's shocking how incredible it is to drive. It feels more like a car, which is a crazy thing to say about a 6,500 pound big truck. I think they have a hit on their hands. I think they've done all the right things, and I think they have approached it from all the right spots. You mentioned the Pro Trailer Assist package and stuff. That stuff they've been perfecting for 10 years, 20 years in some cases. They do trucks really well, and they endurance test them really hard. They have this entire proving ground, and they do like, after I left, the following week, they're going to be in Borrego Springs doing the desert and the sand tests just to make sure that it handles all that really well. So you're getting a truck that you know gets put through all of its paces. And you know that if you have a really heavy 10,000 pound trailer and you're pulling it up a really steep hill incline, you're not going to overheat something because they've done the testing. Their numbers are what they are, going to claim with some sort of safety factor. So I think that goes a long way. And there's tons of people who will buy this because it's built by Ford and they love or respect, or historically their families have bought Ford pickup trucks. So yes, very impressed. And if you go back to my screen while we're at it, we can kind of, for all the guys in the comments, we're going to do 3 more stories and then we'll just talk about trucks. I think it'll be a fun conversation. Yes. But this is the Rivian, right? This is the third. So we now live in an age where you have 3 viable choices coming in the near term, the next year, from 3 companies I know are going to produce trucks. There's some others that I don't have as much faith in, but these 3 I know are going to do it. And I'm excited. I'd happily drive any one of them. I really like all 3 of them. But
yep.
Yeah.
You touched on something that struck home for me too. It struck home for me the more I've been thinking about Rivian. It's like I have a reservation for the Cybertruck, but the more I've been thinking about it, it's like I don't want to be that guy because I'm talking about moving out to Western Massachusetts, and I will be in a town where I would probably be the only person with a Cybertruck, and I don't want to be that guy showing up to buy a gallon of milk and getting all that attention. I don't like attention. I like just to kind of fade off into the background. And so it's like, I want to get a truck, but I'm actually having qualms about getting the Cybertruck. I like personally the way it looks, but it's too blingy. It's way too blingy.
Did you think about that before?
No, I didn't. It was like the more
I didn't either.
The Rivian's been growing on me. It's like, I'm really thinking I would go for a Rivian over the Cybertruck now. I haven't made the call because I got plenty of time to figure it out because I'm probably not going to be buying for like more than a year. But it's like, I'm thinking Rivian, and then after this Ford F-150, it's like, well, maybe it's a Ford, because it's like, this is a really nice truck too. And the price point, that's the other thing we didn't talk about. The price point is so competitive to the Cybertruck. Roughly the same mileage, roughly the same prices. They dropped the gauntlet. I was expecting something to be more expensive than the Cybertruck. And the fact that they were basically able to kind of match the price points is pretty impressive.
I can completely agree. For whatever reason, it never dawned on me either. I just love the specs. The Cybertruck, forget the looks and stuff. I do not care about that kind of stuff at all. But the specs were just so compelling. And I thought, I mean, if you wanted a 500-mile car, you got to pay double the money to get a Plaid Plus Model S, right? Yes. Think about the value proposition then.
Yes.
And that's what it was for me.
Me too.
But I will say, there's going to be a lot of verses and like this heated debates, but the reality is these are 3 trucks for like wildly different people.
Yep.
So, and I think there's going to be room for all. Cybertruck, I think, is going to appeal to people who never bought trucks before. The F-150 is going to appeal to like middle America, people who use trucks every day. They're like in their lifeblood. I've had comments where people were like, I've had an F-150 since 1968 and this is my 7th one, and I keep them for 10 years, and I will have one for. It'll appeal to all of them. So I think it's going to be a winner, and I'm hoping that it'll propel Ford to keep investing and moving in this direction.
I agree, completely agree. So do we want to keep talking trucks, or do we want to move to the next story?
No, let's go back and let's go and keep moving on, and we'll circle back around because there's already some really good comments, and we'll talk.
All
about
right, okay. So the next story, which is kind of a hard left turn, we're talking about the Colonial pipeline fiasco that happened over the past few weeks. The CEO confirmed that they spent $4.4 million in ransom that they paid in Bitcoin to the hackers. It was actually something like 75 Bitcoin that they paid out. And they did say that, this was a hard decision for them to make. They didn't want to do this, but they wanted to get the pipeline back up as fast as possible. But the big thing that we should be taking away from this story, which this story does touch on, is the critical infrastructure in the United States, and it's probably in other countries around the world too, but in the United States is woefully underprepared for this type of attack. And they talked about how this hacker group, DarkSide, tends to focus on North America for hacking. They tend not to do it in the Baltic states. They tend to just focus on us and finding the weak points. And this is a problem for things like hospitals, our city grids. All of these things are opened to ransomware attacks, which is where they get into the network. They basically lock up gigabytes of information and hold it hostage, demanding a payoff so that they will unlock it. And it's just a money-making scheme, but our different networks around the United States are just not prepared for this. And when one hospital was hacked, there was actually a story where that one patient died because they had to divert that patient to a different hospital that was not being affected. And it caused the person to die because they couldn't get the care they needed quick enough. So this does have ramifications that we really have to think about. So what was your take on this whole fiasco that happened?
My take was, I was thinking the economics of this story are really troubling for me. And what I mean by that is, they sell, I think in the article they said 100 million gallons a day, okay? Mm-hmm. If we factored $3 a gallon, $300 million a day. What is $4 million to them? I mean, they wouldn't even account for it. That's like a rounding error for them, right? So to me, that is troubling, because now it's like the U.S., we don't negotiate with terrorists, because partly the minute you start to do it, you're inviting more turmoil. But in the economic incentives here, it is really unfortunate, because even a $5 or $10 million ransom, I think you pay it all day, because first of all, the disruption that happened, right? People filling up garbage bags full of gasoline and flipping their cars over and all kinds of ridiculousness. And the losses in revenue are so extreme that the incentive structure is really poorly in favor of the criminals right now.
Yeah.
And everything you just said, as far as our infrastructure and the fact that it's really woefully inequipped. But at the same time, I'll say this, as a software engineer, I always say that security in software is an arms race, right? You come up with a bow and arrow, and then you have a shield, but then you have a bullet, and then you have Kevlar, and then you have bulletproof. It's an arms race. Every time you upgrade something, you think you've got the latest and greatest in terms of encryption and everything else, there's always vulnerabilities. And we keep patching them, we keep finding stuff, but these guys are really clever. And one thing I've always learned about hackers is they love, more than making money or having stability, they just love the challenge of it. And that's why some of these guys end up making tons of money working for the good guys, because they just love hacking shit. It's a challenge and it's fun. So I think what we are seeing might be the beginning of a trend, and that's what freaks me out. This one particular instance, it shows you how disruptive it can be. But I have a bad feeling that this could be kind of a harbinger of things to come, because the incentive is just too great, and these companies are going to pay, because what is $5 million? The drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
literally in this case.
It's going to get worse and worse. This is going to become the norm.
Yeah, Biden does have some plans, so let's hope that the arms race is two-sided and somewhat fair. But the bad guys typically in this regard usually prevail. Ready for the next story?
Next story.
All right. So that one was a major downer. So let's switch gears and talk about something way more fun.
Lighten it up.
Lightening it up a little bit. Virgin Galactic, which is a company that Matt and I probably have been watching for some time, they had their eyes set on a test space flight this Saturday. They've had to scrap some for various things. There was a was it a radiation issue or something, and their computers had a little like a checksum that didn't pass, and they had to scrap one of their flights. But the Spaceship Unity 2 will be conducting another test flight. They operate in New Mexico. Typically, these kinds of operations always operate in wide open spaces where there's a lot of airspace and few civilians and other passengers. But their philosophy is they get up in this really cool little carrier aircraft that gets them up most of the way. And then in this test, they're not going to actually ignite the rocket, but they're just going to glide back home, test the control surfaces and general handling qualities of the aircraft. But in the future, they'd ignite that rocket at this point and go the rest of the way into like a low Earth orbit. I'm not exactly sure. All the interest of space tourism. And I think I threw this story on the board today because we're at the cusp of what could actually, in our lifetimes, be a new industry. It could be like, oh, we got married, boss, I'm taking 10 days off. My wife and I are going to go check out the moon and go around the Earth a little and wine and dine and come back home. The energy exertion is all to get to orbit. Once, if you're in a stable orbit, you can turn everything off and just glide and enjoy the view for a couple of days. Then maybe you do like a re-entry burn and change your trajectory and come back home. So it's still early. I think they have a lot of challenges ahead of them. I don't think they have the kind of R&D or funding that like SpaceX does. But I look at these guys as another company to keep SpaceX on their heels and to continue to push for a future where space is like going to the airport and catching a flight, which I think is just so cool. Sign me up.
Yeah, no, it signed me up too. It's like I've been obsessed with space my entire life, and the opportunity to go with something like this is amazing. And it's like they're not competing with SpaceX, they're not competing with Blue Origin. That's not what they're trying to do. I just love the fact that space tourism is going to be a thing in my lifetime. It's like, I really hope I can take advantage of this, but it's probably going to be way too expensive for a very long time. So hopefully those prices come down and normal folks like us can afford to go up to space. But this is pretty cool. This is so exciting. I'm going to definitely be keeping my eyes out if they're going to live stream it. I couldn't find anything if they are, but I really hope they do because it should be fun.
I'm going to keep an eye as well. Maybe we can do a community post if we find the details. But yeah. I'm with you. I was hoping they'll do a live stream as well.
Yeah.
Such cool stuff. It's what's crazy is they're burning through, not like making any money yet. So they've got a huge amount of burn in front of them. But hopefully they can actually make this thing happen. Yeah. What do you think would be a cost for a first, like,
oh man,
first tickets, like $1 million each?
It's going to be something like that. It's going to be hundreds of thousands, or if not million. It's going to be very expensive. I think even when the prices come down, it's going to be like 50 grand. It's like, yeah, no, I can't. I'm not going to spend 50 grand doing that.
Matt, you might have to brush up on your hacker skills and see if we can't hijack a pipeline or something to take it.
A little ransomware, be able to afford the trip. Yeah. Well, jump to the next story. The last one?
Yes.
All right. So the last story, this one's also kind of a fun one. Audi wants to do vehicle-to-everything tech to make school buses safer. I was so happy to see you put this on here because this is really cool. Just like, I don't know, if you know me, you know I'm into smart homes and smart cities and technology like this. And this is just so cool about the whole idea of vehicle-to-everything is adding communications technologies like between the car and the environment so that the car knows what's going on in the environment and vice versa. And so what Audi's doing is they're basically just adding these smarts and communications as a test bed. And they're working with Bluebird buses and Fulton County Schools, which is an Atlanta suburb. And they're testing this out for buses because there's 17 million traffic violations every year of cars ignoring school bus stop sign arms, the little stop signs that pop out from the sides of school buses here in the United States. And 17 million traffic violations for this. And so what this would do is, as a car is in a vicinity of one of these buses, there'd be a warning light that would come up on your screen to warn you that there's a bus stopped up ahead. So even if you can't see it yet, you would know it's up ahead so that you could actually start to slow down and prepare for that bus. So it's little things like this that will make our communities safer. It'll make us just think about this being applied to pretty much everything. Like your car being aware of what a stoplight is doing before the stoplight's even in your vicinity. Like you know that there's a red light around the bend coming up. school buses around the bend. It's like, this is such cool tech. I love that they're doing this kind of pilot program. What's your take?
Yeah, if you let me just pull that story. If you I think it was the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum. So the FCC has already kind of cordoned off a section of the radio frequency spectrum for this activity, which is one of the most forward-looking things the government has ever done. I'm trying to think of it in a situation where they had such foresight to sit back and go, in the future when cars are so smart, we should cordon off the 5.9 gigahertz frequency for that. But they've done that. And we talked about this the week when I'd made my FSD beta video talking about inter-vehicle communication and vehicle to everything, meaning it's not just vehicle to vehicle, but it could be like every one of those signs that you see, like, an Amber Alert that conveys information. Every road fixture, anything, not even just passenger vehicles, can communicate. That's where the X comes from. But the benefits here are incredibly special. A Tesla, as great as your computer vision is, if you're driving and there's a kid coming running behind a bus or something, and he darts out and you can't react in time, There's nothing a camera can do. You don't have X-rays. I don't think Tesla's planning X-ray. So anything like this where you can get more context, it's a school crossing, you've changed zones, the arm is out, meaning like you're sending out notifications saying, there's some sort of extra cautionary event, slow down further. All of this stuff, I think, is where we go from. And people have made the argument, once you have full self-driving cars, the rate of incident will plummet. True. Then that final 10% or whatever that last bit, I think you accomplish when you do this. And then when we have both of those, then it becomes like the movies we've all seen. I'm blanking on an example of one where everything just works so flawlessly and it's just perfect. So I'm a fan. I'm a believer in the vehicle-to-vehicle communication protocols. A lot of work has to be done. They have to figure out like standards on how these communications are going to happen, and just even architecture to keep latency low, to make it reliable and predictable. So huge challenge, but I do think that development will go hand in hand with full self-driving regulations going forward.
Yeah, it's going to make our cars superhuman. And it's at that point
where you could not even compete.
You can't even compete with it. It's going to be so like flawless for driving. Well, that was actually the last story of the evening. So we could transition over to the Q&A and we could talk all about trucks, because I bet there's been a lot of comments in about that. So let's jump into it.
My first question is for Peter. He's referenced some sort of, is that a patent number or something? Yeah. What you want to give us some more context? I'm trying to pull it up right now. But yeah. How are we looking on the like situation? Let me refresh.
All right. We're at 67. We can do better than that.
We can do better, guys. Come on.
We got over 200 people in the stream. Come on.
So we did do a couple of different stories before, but I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. I mean, truck buyers, any truck buyers or, long-term truck buyers, let us know what are your thought processes? What are people going to look for? And is F-150 going to be a compelling argument for truck buyers to make?
I'm also curious if people, how they feel about like we were talking about, the Cybertruck bling versus a more traditional truck. We'll think about that.
Right. So Peter mentioned a patent for, I believe, testing for COVID. It says in the patent, it says inventors Richard Rothschild. I'm looking for Peter's name on here, but I don't have any patents. So congratulations, Peter, if that's the case. That's really, really cool. Awesome, amazing work. Ramen Noodles, you're making me hungry, says, do you think the Cybertruck will have vehicle to grid? And that is the question. Tesla's stance so far has been no.
No.
And you don't think they will? Okay.
I don't think they will.
You think the Ford announcement and all the emphasis that they put on it might make them change their tune? They haven't really built the truck yet. They could easily
They could
change their
adapt.
tune before they.
Yeah, I think this is going to change the conversation with the Ford F-150 doing this. So maybe it will, but I don't think they had plans to.
So Dan says limiting the towing to 10,000 pounds. Dan, do you have any feedback on what the average RV or fifth wheeler, how much they weigh? I think I told you, Matt, we kind of did some little RV shopping a couple days ago. We did see some that fall in the 10,000 pound range. The really massive ones, of course, they wouldn't. But typically for those really massive ones, I saw like F-250s towing those. So it might not matter too much. But for the people who tow and really know their truck stuff, please chime in. I'm very, very curious about some of that stuff. And who off the top of their head knows what the payload, the towing capacity is for the Cybertruck?
Benjamin said, I like the blend. So the traditional look appeals to me, but I like the 500-mile range. It'll be interesting what the 60,000 gets you on each one. The range on the Cybertruck is really so compelling.
Absolutely. So there's some chat about the vehicle to home. Right. So you'll need a cutoff because one of the laws or one of the rules every utility was going to have is in the event of a power outage, you can't be sending electricity back to the grid because line operators are expecting to be able to do maintenance without you sending solar or anything else. So that's why the minute the power goes out, the solar kicks off. No power is sent back. You're not going to hurt people. That being said, you need a special cutoff switch. They mentioned next to the charging. If you look at my video, you'll see early on, I kind of panned over the charger, and then to the left of it is this inverter box. So if you install that, then the truck, I don't think there's any limitation on you have to have the platinum version or anything. I think the vehicle to home should be supported generally. It's just a matter of installing the right hardware in the house. So it's not going to be free or cheap, but if you're buying this truck, I think it's a really sound investment to do what it takes to have that support.
MJ asked a good question. With everyone else jumping into vehicle to grid, do you think Tesla is holding out because of their power wall? I think it's more nuanced than that. I think they're looking at it from a user experience point of view, which is you shouldn't have to think about, is my car plugged in or not to be able to get the battery benefit. It's just like you have a power wall installed, you never think about it. It's just humming away in the background. So I just don't think I think it's a little bit of a blind spot because they have the power wall. They don't think it's necessary in a car because they have options to do that. But there's such a wonderful use case for like what happened in Texas. It's like if you're out of power and you don't have a home battery, but you have the world's largest battery sitting in your garage, that's a car. It's like you should be able to plug it in and get it. So I just think it's a little bit of a blind spot. I don't think it's necessarily just because they have the power wall. So I really hope they rethink the benefits there. But I also think it might be because it's part of the reason why I would not want to leave my my truck plugged in as my load balancing system, because it puts extra wear and tear on the battery of the vehicle. And I want to make sure my car the battery abuse is happening from driving the car, not just from also powering my house. So I'd rather have those segmented personally. But for emergency situations where the power goes out and you need extra juice, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, so there's a comment I want to get to, but to your point, I actually disagree. I think it is because of the power wall. I think it's kind of a greedy move a little bit. And Tesla's kind of done this in the past, but why not sell you a car and a power wall, right? And the power wall with installation and everything else is like $12,000, $13,000. Potentially that would be money you'd be losing out. Also, to your point about the load cycles, if you have 100 and let's call this, I'm guessing that this F-150 has 100 and the extended range version has 175-ish kilowatt-hour battery pack. And if you're in the middle somewhere and you're using like 20 or 30 kilowatts back and forth, so you're charged, you have 50% charge to 55 and 45, you could live in that range all day and the battery will last
That's a fair point. Yeah.
100 years. So there's ways to tackle it. I'm not saying that will be the case. There's going to be people who charge to full and they're operating at the top and they're fully topping it off. And so that'll be up to Ford to figure out with software. One thing I will say is they've gone the Tesla route. They've really learned from Tesla in terms of they've built their architecture, even their lower level systems, to be upgradable over the air. So they could potentially change functions about like the charge speed or the charge rate or some of these kinds of considerations. So they might do that in the future. Alejandro Ramirez says, Matt Ricky, you keep repeating about Cybertruck being bling and a spotlight magnet. He says, but so is the first iPhone, the first Teslas. It will be also the same for Rivian. I think this is at another level. I appreciate your sentiment,
Yeah.
but there's no equivalent to like pulling out an iPhone. The first iPhone was this dinky little thing. Honestly, in the palm of your hand, you'd have to really notice it to even pay attention. This is going to be a stainless steel like mirror, like shining as it comes. The first Tesla was the Model S, which is a gorgeous luxury sedan. The average person who's not into cars would not really think twice. It's like, oh, the beautiful Mercedes and a Maserati and a Tesla. It would blend it. This, I think, is wildly different than all of that. And if you don't believe me, if you guys are getting one, let us know.
There will be areas where there will be a lot of Cybertrucks. Like I could totally see a ton of Cybertrucks in San Francisco, where it becomes normalized. You know what I mean? But there's going to be areas where there's going to be like one Cybertruck or 3 Cybertrucks, and it's always going to be an event when you see it. So I think it's going to be situational. And Jeremy Johnson brought up, my wife's family bleeds Ford. This announcement brought about the first conversation I was able to have with my father-in-law, where he was open to all electric vehicle. That's awesome. That's exactly what you were bringing up earlier of this is tapping into a market that has just not cared about electric vehicles, has thought that they were, pointless. It's like it's tapping into a whole new market of people, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was the sentiment I got from a lot of people when I was there. Just people I talked with. The other gentleman who was invited to the show, he's a consulting. He does consulting for EV companies. He's been doing it for 12 years. I can't think of anybody who's been in the EV space longer than him at this point. And I was picking his brain. His name's Terry Travis, and he mentioned that of all the people he talks with, there's a lot of people who we talked about this before. When Honda or Toyota builds an EV, I'll buy it. Right? Mm-hmm. I know people like that. I've heard that. I was at we had a little party for my son, and one of my friends said that. His wife said, when Honda or Toyota has an EV, we'll buy it. So there's just a lot of different types of buyers, different types of audiences. And if we're going to electrify them all, you got to have a lot of options. That's really, I think, the heart of it. We have a lot of good options right now. So Pix Tech, I think, says, I'm getting one. I've had 3 Raptors. Drive one now. I can't wait to get the Lightning. That was my first thought as well. If anybody who has a F-150 today, the speed, the handling, the feel of the car is going to be so wildly improved. And even for the Raptor people, I'm trying to think. Let us know. Thank you, Morgan, for your super chat. Let us know if what all the Raptor has that makes it special is a higher ground clearance. I think it's more of an off-roady type truck. Stuff like limited slip differentials and stuff. But I think the Lightning has all the options as well. I really think the Lightning probably is the new Raptor. It's going to be a tough thing to try to sell a Raptor at this point when you know it's slower than this.
What's funny about they've built a truck that is so much better than any truck they've made. And it's kind of like this weird dance they're going to have to do because they can't sell it in a way that's going to put down their existing truck lines. And it's kind of like what Apple's having to deal with, their new M1 Max. It's like they totally outperform the Intel Max, but they can't really like talk about that too much because it's going to undercut their current lineup. So it's going to be an interesting kind of like line they have to kind of walk for all of this.
Agreed. Get2222, who is no fan from what I can gather in the comments, says Ford grill looks completely fake. It is completely fake. So yes. You're right. I don't understand why we need a fake grill in any car. That goes back to, I think this car is not for you, but there's millions of people who I think it is for. They've seen a truck away and that's the way they like it. And they're not looking for something different. And that's just personal preference, right? There are people who like things a certain way, people who love new and shiny. So that I think is okay. The really cool thing is what Matt mentioned, that the hood, which is fake, as you mentioned, improves the aerodynamics substantially compared to the gas truck because you don't have to have radiators for cooling, and is connected to the hood, which is all reshaped for aero as well. And as a result, the front trunk is really easy to deal with. Compared to the Rivian, if you remember, you reach into the tub, which is just a tougher motion. Like imagine getting like a cooler or something and lifting 30, 40 pounds up over that tub. Compared to this is like the sedan, like our trunk in our car. You just slide it in.
Like how tall is your wife? Like imagine a woman trying to get into the front of the Rivian versus getting into the front of the Ford F-150. It looked like it was low enough that anybody could get stuff out of that frunk.
It maybe was just me, but I think the Rivian is a lower to the ground truck as well. The F-150 I think rides higher because the Rivian, I felt like the tub was weird, but I thought it was serviceable. But the F-150, if it had Rivian style tub, you forget it. You'd have to be like slingshotting stuff into it. It would be tough to deal with. They thought about that a lot.
Yeah, Scott Mormon brought up Osborne effect. It's like when you've built a better product that kind of undercuts your existing product line, that's kind of what they're having to fight.
Thank you again, Morgan, for your super chat. He says, please don't buy your truck based on other people's reactions. Yeah, do you. That's the beauty of capitalism and options and a healthy marketplace. I completely agree. Beach Crow says Tesla will likely make twice the profit per Cybertruck as the F-150. Mega casting, no paint, origami body. That's a very interesting argument. I think the Cybertruck, there's probably going to be a little bit of a production hell, something wholly new. But when they get to the level where they are now with the Model 3, I could see that. I think the profit will be pretty substantial for the Cybertruck. But there's going to be challenges too. These huge mega castings can potentially pose some issues as well in terms of quality control and stuff. We'll see. But I think generally that's probably going to be the case.
Oh, to go back to Tino brought up an interesting point we should have talked about. During the event, they also showed their e-Transit cargo van.
Yes.
And it was like another example of why Ford seriously is taking this seriously, because on the for the truck, they talked about how like they have the fleet management software is going to be part of this. They're going to have different rates for people who are buying in volume for commercial use. And then they have that e-Transit van, which is one of the best-selling transit vans on the market. So they're coming out swinging, and it looks like they're starting at the commercial end, which is interesting because they have the Ford Mustang Mach-E, which is more consumer level, I guess you could say. Yeah. But with the Ford F-150 and the transit van, that's going to be commercial across the board. So it's like they're coming out pretty strong in a big market where nobody else really has a foothold yet.
Yeah, I agree. There was a question about range, and this is actually my take on range. My Tesla does about 50 miles less than it claimed to ever do. I think Tesla is wildly ambitious with range, and that pretty much goes for every model. I think if you drive 60 miles an hour, if the temperature is perfect, like it is in like San Diego, California, maybe. But I think Tesla is optimistic with range. They don't offer any kind of city or freeway, or they just give you a number and don't hit it. From talking with Ford, they appear to really obsess about making sure that their buyers will hit that number. And what I mean is, like, if you buy a Tesla, you're just excited to have a Tesla. I don't care that I don't get 300 miles of range. I have a wildly fun Model 3 Performance that I love driving every day. But if you're buying an F-150 electric truck, and the average buyer maybe had a gas truck before that, and you tell him you have 300 miles of range and suddenly he's on the side of the road at 230, that won't work. So Ford they've got a weight sensor in the bed, so it can detect how much you're hauling around. So you have 500 pounds, you have 2,000 pounds. It'll know what you're doing. And they even have strain gauges in the hitch assembly, and that way you can detect what you're towing. And it all factors in, and they look into weather and the altitude. A lot of this stuff, I think, again, Tesla's led the way, and Tesla is incredible when it comes to like predicting your range. They're always very accurate. And I think they are going to go on the conservative side. I think they're going to have a big battery pack, and they're going to do what it takes to get you to 300, as opposed to where Tesla will say 300 and you'll get 250, and that's okay. So my prediction is that the Ford will get closer, and it's going to be because their customers are going to get irritated and they're going to get pissed if they don't. Whereas I think Tesla's customers are they understand, and they accept that maybe we're driving faster than we need to because we love our cars. And anyways, I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of my take.
Thank you, Bob, for the super chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate you. I don't think I've seen Bob Ware on the channel before, so we appreciate you. Morgan says, one of my biggest complaints about Tesla is that their range is not better optimized for freeway speed. Yeah, you can't really optimize for freeway speeds. I mean, the impact of drag on range is just a function of the square of your speed. So every 10 miles an hour you're going faster, it's just going to increasingly decrease your range. So really the only substitute for that is add more batteries and understate your range, right? Basically go the other direction with it. But I agree. If I'm doing 80 on the freeway, I'm not going to get anywhere near 300 miles. I don't know if you do I think the all-wheel drive long range does better than the performance, but my car is not even close.
Mine's about 50 miles off from what it was told to be too. John Clayton asked, where does Ford source their batteries for their EVs, and what charging network was it that they mentioned? For the Mustang Mach-E, they're sourcing them from LG, and then for the truck, I believe they're getting it from, was it SK? It's the Korean
SK
company?
Innovations, which is a Korean company that's gotten a little bit of flack for stealing IP from LG. There was a lawsuit, and in the U.S., they basically kind of skirted it in the interest of allowing some of these companies that are ambitious about building trucks to proceed. So SK Innovation has, there's a little bit of controversy there. I'm not exactly sure if they've been found guilty or if they're still in the process or whatever. Doesn't really matter. The point is they're building a plant. I believe it is in Georgia. So they're going to be building, I believe it's a Korean company, but they're going to be operating here in the U.S., kind of the Panasonic model. And they're going to be a big time supplier for some of these companies that build trucks. I think it'll be SK also for the transit van. So yeah.
And they only mentioned Electrify America, I believe, for the charging network, right?
So for the charging
and others,
they have they have the charging port is CCS, just like the Mach-E, and they have what's called the Ford Pass, which is Electrify America, and there's a couple of other players as well, like EVgo, and there's a couple of others that they aggregate all together. And as they do that, they claim, this is the kind of stuff, they claim that their network will be the biggest because there's these different partner networks that come into it. But Electrify America, I think, is going to be like the backbone of it. It'll be the biggest contributor. Greg says SK Innovation settled with LG. Thank you, Greg. I hadn't been keeping up with that. That's good. We'll have touch base on that. David Darling asks, what effect do you think the F-150 will have on public charging network? Will it get better sooner? What do you think, Matt?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties because my dog's over here.
Okay, I'll take this one. So I think it's not just the F-150. I thought that might be the case. I wasn't sure if I think the F-150, the Mach-E, the ID4, all these new car companies are just going to push further along. I will say Electrify America, I had some negative views about them earlier from bad experiences, but I think they're making progress at a fast rate. And the thing is, it's kind of like Apple sells a ton of iPhones, like the Tesla Supercharger network. But think about all the other parts of the world that build Android phones. It's going to be a huge race of networks and stuff. So the F-150, the Mach-E, the ID4, cars that sell in a decent volume, I think are going to absolutely help push that forward in a big way.
We have a couple of super chats. Rob Womack was charging like with the Ford F-150. And thanks very much for the super chat.
Thank you, Rob.
They were saying something like 44 minutes or something like that to go from 15 to 80%, or what was that what it was?
Yeah, they're their charge speed that they're hitting right now, and I didn't really report on this too much because I'm really hoping that this changes between now and then. They're hitting about 150 kilowatt DC fast charging speed, which I'd like to see that go up. The Electrify America networks that are rolling out today support 350 theoretical. You're probably going to get above 200 for stretches of that, but charging at 150 feels a little slow to me. The ID4 was 120 kilowatt DC fast charging, and my drive from San Diego to the Bay Area took 1 hour longer due to longer charging stops than in my Tesla, which charges at 250 kilowatt. So, a little data point there.
I love everybody nagging for the thumbs up.
We appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
This is one of our highlights of our week. Thank you for joining us. We're almost at 300 of you, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you for all the support, you guys. We'll have some news in the coming weeks about some changes in my life as well. So your support really means a lot to us. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Jeremy asked about, didn't they mention dual charging on the F-150? I believe they did, didn't they?
Yeah, so the dual charging means that they're able to charge, I think it's like 18 kilowatt AC, like level 2 at home. So my NEMA 1450 can pull about 9 kilowatts, I believe, from the wall. And that's about as much as the current that I can pull through that circuit. So what they can do is, imagine I had two NEMA 1450 side by side, and I plugged in 2 outlets into the car, and I doubled that to 18. That's in essence what they're doing. So the reason why that is, well, I can kind of do the back math here really quickly in my head, but my car at the full 40 amps can charge in about 6 hours or so. And in California, it's really important that you charge between midnight and 6 a.m. You don't want to pay the higher rate for electricity. So I think their thought process is, if our battery's going to be twice as big, we want to really try to get that truck fully charged. They don't want, again, what Ford is thinking is they don't want to have a 2-day conversation with customers. Let me tell you why you used to drink coffee at 7. No. Now you sleep in until 8:30. Then you get your coffee because your truck is. They don't want you to change your life, right? They want you to just get in and everything to be the same. And I think what they realized is, with the bigger battery pack and level 2 charging levels, having the dual charge would allow you to be able to charge it all the way, even if you drove it to 0 to back to 100% before you left the next day. So that's where that comes from. Jambe says we got to make sure we coordinate our wardrobes, before, and maybe I'll do it. I'll do a V-neck, or you do a V-neck. We'll figure it out. We'll coordinate. We'll make sure. There's a really good question, and Tesla, I think, has to answer this one as well, which is, when you're. Let me make sure I found it. Okay, a very good point about how to charge when towing. So this comes from DJ Corza. And he says, well, you have to disconnect the trailer. That could be a nightmare. Imagine some of these trailers could take 30 minutes to kind of hook up. So I'm hoping not. And what that gets to is, currently we see charging stations that are at the end, like, of a parking lot. I think what we'll see is like the center lanes of a parking structure, where you have the double lane sometimes for like longer trucks, and charging stations like in the center. So you could pull right in and still be able to operate it. Currently, Tesla's gonna have the same problem. If you were towing with your Model X, what are you gonna do?
I actually saw that. Somebody was towing something. They were towing a long boat behind a Model 3 that they had put a tow hook on, and they came into the supercharger and they couldn't figure out how to get their car in to charge, and they ended up just going. And I was like, wait, you're gonna keep driving? You have to charge up. What are you gonna do? Come back.
This is a good question. Any information if you have solar installed, AC coupled, so Enphase microinverters, can the new F-150 be charged from your existing solar panels when switched to powering home during outage? There's, well, I think what we should probably just do, and I can add notes to my video that I made. I'll reach out and get some of these answers, but I mean, from just thinking about it, if there's a kill switch that keeps all the current in your house and it doesn't go back to the grid, at that point, if you've got like AC power coming in, there's no reason why it couldn't feed through the cable. It's all possible. It just comes down to utility requirements and like, UL certifications and maybe just hiring an electrician to get it set up. But these are the kinds of questions I'd imagine Ford has thought through. So I'm going to optimistically say that all of this should be supported, but we should reach out and get more guidance for sure.
Looks like Mike wants to get in touch with you. Did you see that comment?
No.
It's a little off topic, but he's a patron of yours and can't seem to get a hold of you through messaging there. Is there a better way?
Weird. Absolutely, Mike. I think I know who that is. I'll reach out to him. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get in touch. So this is a good question. Andrew Kaler says, Ricky, is there any benefit to a Ford customer to use their charging network through the partnership with Electrify America? So just like the supercharger network, it'll be seamless. When you plug in your car, there's going to be some sort of an authentication and a handshake that says who you are in your card and your billing information is on file. And I believe that Ford told me that when you buy the truck, you'll have like the first 250 kilowatt hours will be free, and then you'll pay after that, which is not as good as Volkswagen, who gives you 3 years for free. Lucid has said 3 years for free with EA. So little perk there, but it's not a whole lot. You can basically charge your truck up like twice, and it would be used up. But if you do get the truck and you get the EA, do the math on the plans. But I think there's a plan where the hourly rate for the charging drops, and depending on how much you drive, it's probably worth doing that, which is what my friend Ryan from the Kilowatts has told me.
Oh man, good question, MJ. With electric trucks coming to the market, is this not an opportunity for trailer companies to optimize their product for them, like regen or powered trailers?
How cool would that be?
Yes, this would be the perfect opportunity for trailer companies to optimize their products like that.
100% agree.
Killer.
And early days like this, they should come up with a protocol or a standard. Imagine you have this like EV trailer smart hook, and you plug it in, and they speak the same language, and the truck could like relay messages back and say like regenerate now, because they can have their own battery packs on board. They can power their wheels just to alleviate the load from your truck, but it needs to be standardized, and we have no standards today. So some smart guy will have to start to kind of formulate this, talk to the F-150s, Rivians, and Cybertrucks of the world, and that would be so cool.
Yeah.
MJ, if you do that, ping us when you're a billionaire, and
Yes.
Don't forget about us.
And you'll make millions.
I think it was probably a technical glitch, but Austin McLaren asked 3 or 4 times, 4 or 5, 6 times.
Oh, is mine not a good question? Yeah.
Is mine not a good question?
Why can't they use water and collect the hydrogen to make combustion?
Well, so in nature, it's all about the natural state. Like, what's the low energy state of stuff? The low energy state of water is that oxygen and hydrogen react and form water. So if you can separate that, it takes input of electricity to extract the hydrogen. So now you have hydrogen that is out there as a gas, as H2. It's diatomic when they always together. And then when that process goes in reverse, that process lets out energy. So even if you collect the water, you still got to separate the H2 from the O. So that's the part that you got to figure out. And as Matt has covered really well recently, I think the last 4 or 5 videos you covered this, not always easy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with towing and stuff, but for people who do, I'd love your feedback if like anybody who gets an early Rivian or whatnot. But it just it sounds like such an adventure, and I'm ready for adventure. We talked about this. Ben Pena says that the EV smart trailer sounds like a good project for rich rebuilds. I agree.
I agree too. Holy cow, yeah.
He would do great with that.
Well, we're at time. I'm always the party pooper bringing this up, but we're at time, so we should really probably call it. But,
Eric mentioned the electric Bronco, which they have teased. That will be a killer smash hit. That would be cool. A small wheelbase passion car like the Bronco. Yeah, I'd want one too. So don't know much yet, but it'll be fun. Thank you guys so much. As always, been a blast.
Yep. Thanks so much for watching. And don't forget, if you want to listen to the audio version of the podcast, it's at viceversa.show, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern every Thursday night. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.